started with, okay, you guys, what I have here is, well, we're making beef cook-up. Cook-up rice is one of them things where it's very versatile. You can use multiple meats in here, or you can choose to use one. In this case here, we've got beef, 1.5 pounds. It started off at about 1-inch pieces, but you can see as they brown, yeah, so we browned it. So it just was the plain beef, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, medium heat, and it's been going for about 7 to 10 minutes, anywhere around there. And notice the lovely color we have there. And the reason why I like doing it like this versus seasoning and marinating the beef before is because when I do it like this, I don't add browning, nor do I add cashew. This is how I help to get the color, and to help achieve that color, I'm also going to add some tomato paste in there. Very unconventional, very non-Caribbean, and adding that tomato paste in there, it's not traditional to the recipe. However, you're going to see several steps in this recipe that's not traditional to a good cook-up rice, but this is sort of an edited version, and this, it works. I'll be honest with you, it works. And the tomato not only is it going to help me get that nice color later on, because I hate pale looking cook-up rice, it also brings acidity to the game, which helps balance the flavors. And on that note, I will add some tomato as well, which again is not traditional to the recipe. Carrots, that tomato I mentioned earlier, garlic, onions, and the full printable recipe, as always, will be available at CaribbeanPot.com, so don't worry too much. I've got all this sorted out over there. Of course, we need some Caribbean green seasoning. If you're new to Caribbean cooking, Caribbean green seasoning is simply a blend or puree of all the herbs we like using in our dishes. I like it spicy, so I'm going in with an entire Scotch bonnet pepper that's sliced up, seeds and everything in there. And you can cut back on that. You can use as much as you want. Remember to wash your hands with soap and water after handling such hot peppers, because you really don't want to play around with that. Next, you touch your face, you touch whatever, and you're going to run into problems. Red kidney beans, straight out of a can, but I rinsed it. And this is a really small kidney bean. I'll just show you. It is not the big dark red one. I like this it's almost pink, to be honest with you. Just going to give that a stir. The liquid from the rinsing, yes, and I do rinse. I don't know if I mentioned it before, the kidney beans from the can there, I do rinse it out because I don't want all that sodium and sort of briny solution coming and affecting things here. Just give that a good stir, and just look how nice that's looking. Now we need a liquid to braise this, to bring the beef nice and tender. Uncle Chris grew up with fork tender meat, whether it was pork, goat, mutton, lamb, beef, always tender. So what we're going to do now is turn up the heat a bit, and we're going to go in with coconut milk. Yeah, that coconut milk is out of a can. I'm just going to rinse this out with 1/2 cup of water. So 3 cups of coconut milk. And again, all the ingredients will be listed on CaribbeanPot.com within the next 48 hours. So really, don't stress too much about that. Just going to give that a stir. And I'm using a big wide pot here, my big old heavy iron pot, my Dutchy pot, because it's easier for you all to see on camera here. But the other thing I'm doing is I'm going to cook quite a bit. It's going to end up being quite a bit, and I'm going to, when I usually cook this, what I do is I allow it to cool after later on when I'm done eating, and I hit that with black pepper while I'm talking. And the leftovers, I put it in vacuum sealed bags and I freeze it. And whenever I'm in the mood, because it does take quite a while, because we're going to let this braise, we're going to bring it up to a boil, we're going to reduce it to a simmer, between a simmer and a rolling boil, and we're going to let that go for about 45 minutes to 1 hour before we add the other ingredients. So salt and black pepper. Later on we can adjust the salt, but for now all we're trying to do is bring this up to a boil, reduce it to a simmer, and let it go and cover it. Now if you need to add liquid during the sort of braising process, but you know what, you go ahead, no problem. It's been 1 hour. It's been going on that sort of rolling boil that you're seeing there. I did end up adding another 1/2 cup of water to things. The beef will be tender in another 30 minutes or so. So at this point is when we're going to sort of add the body of the cook-up rice, and of course that body means rice. I have 3 cups of parboiled brown rice which I've already washed. So it's important that you wash the rice, and the rice will, and by washing the rice, all you're going to do is rinse it in cool water and drain it, rinse it and drain it until that water runs clear. It will be cloudy to start with, and as you proceed in washing and repeating the steps, it will run clear. But before I add the rice, I'm going to go in with okra, or what we call, okra. Many of you call it okra. We call it okra lovingly in the Caribbean. A bit of diced pumpkin and spinach. Now, were I in the Caribbean, I would be using dasheen bush leaves, which is the taro leaves. But this is just everyday basic spinach, baby spinach, that I just gave a rough chop to. I'm going to go ahead and give that a good stir. This one I'm going to turn my heat back up to medium-high, because after we add the rice, which is going to go in next, we'll need to add more water to braise, well, not braise, but to cook that rice fully. And this is the sort of okra that I used. I trimmed off the top and the bottom, and then I sliced it up into about 1 centimeter wheels. This one here is very tough. I'm not going to put that in there. That ain't adding nothing to the proceedings here. So in goes that rice, which has been washed, as I said. And you notice I said earlier, and I mentioned that when I made this, I made quite a bit with the intention of freezing. So that is why I used 3 cups of that rice. If you want to go in with 2 cups of rice, you can do that as well. Just keep in mind, be mindful of the sort of sodium or salt element. So you just need to cut back a bit on the salt once you see the printable recipe on CaribbeanPot.com. Give that a good stir just to make sure everything is nice and incorporated in here. And it's then time to add water. I know some of you may be tempted to add chicken stock or beef stock or vegetable stock. Yes, you can, but I might like to keep it somewhat traditional, even though the recipe isn't as traditional to some you may see online. I just want to stick to water at this point. In total, I will add 7 cups of water, and later on, if I need to, because you know, with me, I like my cook-up rice a bit on the wet side. So this is why I'm adding the extra water. Now you can add 6 cups of water, because you know the golden rule is 2 cups of water to every cup of rice, liquid to every cup of rice. So that would bring us to 6 cups, but I'm going to add that extra cup in there simply because I want it a bit more wet. So I'm going to add 7 cups of water in total, bring it up back up to a boil, reduce it to a simmer, and let that go until the rice is nice and plump. Let me hit all that a little stir in the meanwhile while I yap in. The rice will go nice and nice and plump, and honestly, that beef will continue cooking. Like I said, Uncle Chris grew up, Mommy would make this anytime she made anything with beef, fork tender. It will only take about 4 or 5 minutes for it to come up to that boil, and that is the sort of boil that I want going. I don't want it overly vigorous. I just want it nice and steady, because what's going to happen is if it's overly vigorous, it's going to burn off the liquid before the rice is fully cooked. If you wanted to put a lid on there, you can, but there really isn't any need to. Now, if you wanted to add a bit of ginger in here, if you wanted to add a couple bay leaves in here, you can certainly do that. Totally up to you. At times when I don't use that sort of pink kidney bean, I substitute that with you know, that frozen peas and carrot with the green beans in it. That works as well. But all we need to do now, have some patience, let this cook until the rice is nice and plump. It's going to soak in all of that lovely flavor that we have here. If you wanted to add some fresh thyme, you can do that as well. I'm too lazy to go into the backyard to get any thyme. My green seasoning loaded with thyme and other niceties. So patience. Now it's been about 20 minutes. At this point, what I want you to do, and you notice the liquid is starting to go down, the rice grains are going nice and plump. Take a teaspoon or tablespoon, fish out some of that sauce in there, taste it, make sure the salt is to your liking. Adjust that salt at this point, because later on it will be a bit difficult to adjust that salt once the rice is fully cooked. Yeah. So, and the other sort of personalization you're gonna do here is, by the way, have we ever talked about getting mushy, sort of creamy risotto looking rice? Try, if you don't like mushy rice, try, you saw me stirring and stirring. The more you stir, each rice grain is going to rub against each other and the starch is going to be released, and that's what's going to cause it to be thick and what we call sappy. If you don't want that, try not to over stir it. But here's where you're going to decide a few things. One, how wet you want this. If you want to cook dry, the sort of consistency or texture of the rice, I like it fully cooked. Some people, weird if you ask me, they like their rice a little al dente, which means a little bite to it. I don't. And lastly, of course, the salt. So I'm going to continue cooking this, give it another 5 to 7 minutes or so, and then I will decide if I'm adding a bit more liquid. Now remember, if liquid is disappearing on you, you can always keep adding some more liquid. Make sure it's hot though, hot liquid. This way that you don't kind of sway the temperature of what's going on inside there. Sup soldiers? Listen, if you enjoy this recipe, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and click that bell notification thing. If you've made the recipe, take a picture and send it to me. Email address down here. I mean, trying to tell people the email address, then bots will take the address and do all kind of thing with it. And tag me on Instagram at Caribbean Pot. I really appreciate you guys, and thanks for being in my kitchen with me today. Irie. So my rice is almost to the point where I like it. So I'm just going to turn my heat down and let this go for 2 more minutes before I shut off the stove, because like I said, I want it a bit wet. Chris here, CaribbeanPot.com. We just learned how to make beef cookup rice. Yeah. Now, and I explained along the way why I did certain things the way I did. So please save the sort of your imbecile comments and thing. I find myself having to defend myself every time I share a recipe lately. But anyhow, let's see the kind of niceness we have going on here, right? 1 pot, 1 plate, and you're good. A nice little salad on the side. By the way, a lot of food here. 8 to 10 people eating comfortably from this. Alright, let me throw that little stir again to show you what's happening here. Let's look at that. Now keep in mind, the more you stir this, you're going to break up the okra as well too. It's all about that. It's all about textures and flavors and thing. Alright?